On today's show, the Houston Rockets managed to survive going ice cold in the fourth quarter against the Denver Nuggets to get their first road win of the season. How did they manage to go up as many as 25 points? And then what exactly happened there in the fourth quarter as they almost collapsed and lost this game? Jalen Green's success in the third quarter, Dillon Brooks clamping Jamal Murray, and so much more. It's all coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Throw it up to Jalen Green.
Sengun here in the short row. Oh, my, that's the no-look.
Jabari for three and the win. Yeah!
Look at Tari, Eason.
Here comes Tari.
Oh! T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Houston Rockets select Ime Thompson and Cam Whitmore.
One thing I have never done is not made the playoffs, and so we want to take that step here as well.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin. The show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You've got to check out Prize Picks if you haven't yet. If you've been considering getting into daily fantasy sports, it's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. Thank you for making the show part of your day every single day. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, NBA draft enthusiast Madison Moore, who you can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks, here to help us break down what was one of the most insane roller coasters in recent memory of Houston Rockets basketball. The 114-106 win against the Denver Nuggets. Madison, first off, they finally broke the seal. They got that first road win. They are no longer, let the lesson be learned, that you do not beat the Houston Rockets and keep 0-9 on the road. It's not out there anymore. They finally got the first win out of the way, but man, did they make it like the most like heart-wrenching roller coaster of a win, going from like the high that was that third quarter to then the utter collapse that was that fourth quarter.
Yeah, man. That fourth quarter was something else, but I feel like that fourth quarter was something personal for Denver about getting back on track and getting their team back in rhythm. And, it was unfortunate that it happened against the Rockets, but they had done enough in the first three quarters to definitely secure the win. So I'm really proud of the Rockets, and especially their young players who showed up big once again.
This is kind of weird because this game kind of felt like it was like three chapters, right? So there was the first half, which was like one chapter, which was kind of weird, where like neither team felt like they were playing well. Like the Nuggets especially looked like they weren't playing well. I mean, Jokic was like all out of sorts. He was missing all kinds of shots that he normally makes, turning the ball over. Like it was a bad game from the Nuggets. But then you look on the other side and you're like, okay, the Rockets should probably be up like what, 10, 15, 20 because the Nuggets are playing so horribly. And they were even getting outplayed in the non-Jokic minutes. Like that's how bad that first half was going. Yet the Rockets still, they cling to like a small lead going into halftime. And then you have the third quarter happens and they hung 40 on the Nuggets in the third. So 40-26 in that third quarter. They took an 18-point lead going into the fourth. And it felt like they were going to run away with this thing. Like I was sitting there in Rockets Watch, hosting the game, talking to the guys. I'm thinking, man, if they can push this lead to like 25-30, which at one point with about 8.5 minutes to go in the game, it was about a 25-point lead. And Madison, when I tell you, Jokic checked back in. And he hit that first bucket after he checked back in. And I had one of those like weird, like gut feelings where I was like, and I called it. If you were in Rockets Watch with me, you know that I called it. I said, guys, I have a bad feeling about like Jokic came back in with like a massive like chip on his shoulder. Like I'm going to come in and I'm going to show you I'm the best player in the world. And he did just that, right? He ran off like it was like 7 or 8 straight points in a row and forced a timeout from Ime Udoka. And even after that timeout, Ime didn't put the starters back in. It's like he was trying to tread water with the guys that he had out there. And I was like begging, imploring, pleading with the screen in front of me, like, dude, just put the starters back in. Like, don't play around with this. And we saw like one of the most crazy collapses. The Rockets didn't score a field goal the rest of the game. They had to rely on free throws from about the 8:30 mark to the end of the game. I believe it was. I think that's correct. I remember seeing that stat somewhere, and I'm like trying to confirm right now. But I do not believe the Rockets scored a field goal for the final 8.5 minutes of this game. Can you believe that?
It's insane. I did not know that. That is.
Yeah, it's all free. It's all free throws down the line. Yep, right? All free throws in the fourth quarter.
From
8.5 to the final buzzer, it was all free throws.
That kind of lines up with my recollection of what happened at the end of the game. But for me, I watched the game and I listened to the Denver broadcast. And the Denver broadcast talked about how Jokic had really struggled the game before and that had carried over to this game. And I want to credit the Rockets defense. The Rockets defense were there and contested on every shot that Jokic took. But these were typically shots that Jokic still made despite the contest, right? But the Rockets did a good job of keeping him out of rhythm, that even though he was already not in rhythm. And that is very important when you're guarding superstar players and very talented players, to keep them out of rhythm. And I think the Rockets did that a very good job of that the entire game. But it seemed like the fourth quarter, the Nuggets were tapping into something that was long overdue for them. And it felt very personal. Malone played them in, what seemed to be garbage time minutes, and they really responded. You know what I mean? And the Rockets did not respond in the way that we would like. But I feel like the Rockets in and of themselves played such a good game, especially defensively, all throughout the game. They gave them the cushion that allowed them to still win this game. Jalen Green in particular, in that third quarter was absolutely spectacular.
I want to focus on Jalen Green's third quarter here, but I want to save that so we can give it the time that it deserves a little bit later on. Because here's my thing, Madison, is that fourth quarter collapse. So not only did it feel like Ime didn't put the starter, like this was probably the first game, Madison, where I really took a hard look at Ime. I was like, man, this might be the first game where like I have not like lingering long-term questions about. He's still like, I think, a top 5 coach, and like but this was probably the first game where I looked at him. I was like, if they had lost this game, I would have said the loss is squarely on Ime's shoulders, because there's just like, to this point, I feel like he has done a phenomenal job of like, the in-game, pushing the right buttons, substitutions, making sure he has the right lineups out there. Like the in-game coaching that he does has been phenomenal up to this point, with a few little quirks here and there. But this was the one where I was like, man, what are we doing? And a big part of it was, so first off, not putting the starters back in soon enough. Like when Jokic started the run. And then on top of that, I thought the decision to close with Jeff Green. He did it once before against the Nuggets, and we know that, having Uncle Jeff out there, right? He's relied on him before. He closed against the Pelicans, then closed against the Nuggets, and we know that him closing against the Nuggets, a part of it was him being out there, blowing up all the Nuggets plays, calling stuff out. But this is the fourth time the Rockets have played the Nuggets in like a month. Like, you'd think the team probably knows some of the sets and plays by now. And honestly, the level at which Jabari Smith Jr. has been playing pretty consistently, and especially in this game, not filling it up a lot offensively, but rebounding at a high level. He had 10 boards again in this one, so he's been rebounding very, very well as of late. He was facilitating well. He had 5 assists in this game, so second in team leading as far as assists go, right behind Alperen and Sengun with 7. I really felt like Jabari deserved to be out there with that closing group. And I know Jeff made a couple plays late, a couple offensive tip outs to give the Rockets some, second and third chance opportunities that they refused to capitalize on, because there was just like a lid on the basket late. And credit to the Nuggets defense. They were scrambling. It's like, again, that Jokic run like energized them to where they were like, oh, we can win this game. And they almost did.
Yeah.
So I lost maybe a little confidence in Ime because of this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, coaches are still learning as well. I mean, I don't think I lost confidence, but I do agree that some of the decisions he made was questionable, especially with the type of defense Jabari had played throughout the game. I thought he was excellent on defense. We talk about these young players understanding toughness in these games, and I thought Jabari Smith was very tough throughout defensively on the perimeter as well as in the paint, right? I thought his help defense was really good and has really improved over the course of the season. So I definitely agree that Jabari should have been out there. And I'd like to point out as well that I didn't agree with the level of sets the Rockets ran where they needed buckets and the ball wasn't in Jalen Green's hands. And I'll say this, as throughout this season, Jalen Green has not really produced in the clutch, and he's been turnover prone. And it seems as soon as he makes one mistake, they tend to just run the offense through Fred VanVleet. And for me, I think he still needs a little bit more rope to run this offense and to get going in the fourth quarter, and to give him the confidence that, hey, this game is in your hands, especially with the type of game he had, especially in the third quarter. I would have liked to see he had a turnover where he tried to kick it to the shooter in the wing, and he turned the ball over and it led to an easy layup. But then I felt like they never went back to Jalen Green throughout the course of that fourth quarter, and he kind of played just as an off-ball threat. And I'd like to see, especially with the lead that was a cushion for the Rockets, right? To allow Jalen to get back into rhythm. You know what I mean? We could afford a turnover or two in that position. And let's just be frank. The Rockets did not fare well in those minutes with the ball in Fred's hand as well. And I just thought that was also, this was the opportunity for Ime to trust in Jalen to help build his confidence in the end times of these games, which he's struggled with all season. But I do understand with this tough love and that approach as well as a part of the offense. But I definitely agree with you on that, Jackson.
Coming up, we're going to get into some of why Jalen Green had some success for what feels like maybe the first time on the road this season, which was a bit surprising, but welcome to see in this game against the Nuggets, specifically in that third quarter, part of that big surge for the Houston Rockets to take such a massive lead going into the fourth and final frame before their collapse. Plus, we'll take a look at some of the other elements at play from this game. And we've got a little Cam Whitmore to sprinkle in at the end of the show, dropping 40 in the G League. We're going to get to all of that and so much more here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you just pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks is so simple to play. You can make your picks and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. They've got quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types, which is what makes Prize Picks the #1 DFS app on the market. And with basketball season in full swing, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that include 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, you can do LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made plus reception. So if you've been thinking about getting into daily fantasy sports, you've got to give Prize Picks a chance. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA with promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Some exciting news as Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Now, Madison, we need to take a look at Jalen Green here in this game, who is your Locked On Rockets player of the game. I had a couple comments call me out for last game for not actually giving Aaron Holiday the Locked On Rockets player of the game in the episode. I made the graphic for him and everything. I gave him credit because Aaron Holiday, it was holiday season, man. Jingle bells, deck the halls with 3-pointers, all that good stuff. But Jalen Green is your Locked On Rockets player of the game from this one. And I'm in agreement with you. I was thoroughly impressed with what he did there in the third quarter. And first off, it was nice to see him do it on the road. I thought the process was really good for Jalen in this game. I thought he was picking and choosing his spots well. He only had 1 assist in this game, but I didn't feel like he was a ball stopper at all. I really felt like he understood.
Hockey assist.
Yeah, hockey assists, and then also just, understanding how to attack the Nuggets defense, right? Reading what spots were open for him on the floor and how to kind of get his. And that's been such a big part for Jalen, is understanding, not forcing things offensively and understanding, okay, if the defense is guarding me like this, then this is what's open to me. He took so many mid-range shots that were just well within the flow of the offense. Hey, okay, Nuggets are going to drop and there's not going to be anybody in my face. Cool. I'm going to pull up for this little 16, 18 footer right above the free throw line. And he did that, 3 or 4 times in this game? That was really impressive.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think to me, this is about Jalen understanding his spots and where his spots is that he can get easy buckets that he can be consistent with, because consistency is his biggest problem right now. And so on the road, I thought Jalen gave the Rockets just what they needed in the third quarter. And also he was able to get out and run, to cut effectively, and to get some easy buckets as a catch and shoot shooter. And I think that's really key for Jalen to get into rhythm. And one of the things I like that he took a lot of shots of was his floater in the lane. That in between game, as you talked about with the mid range as well, was very potent in this game, as well as understanding when the lane was free for him to use his speed to get all the way to the basket for layups and to draw fouls. And so Jalen's consistent pressure on the rim also allowed for him to make plays in the middle of the court where he hit Sengun, where Sengun was able to make the home run assist, right? And I thought Ime talked about early in the season about Jalen not predetermining his reads, whether you're just going to shoot or whether you're going to score. To me, it felt very natural that Jalen was taking what the defense gave him. I'd like to see him do more floaters in the lane. I think that is an excellent shot for him in a similar mode that Ja Morant, you know what I mean? And so for that, I thought his shot profile was excellent for his archetype of play, and it produced a very efficient game. And I just would have liked to see him do more in the fourth quarter. But like I said, he didn't have the opportunity to get a lot of those on-ball touches and initiation reps. But he definitely carried the Rockets in the third quarter, which gave us the lead to be able to withstand the runs that the Nuggets gave in the fourth.
You know what's kind of crazy is Jalen definitely spearheaded that third quarter, but it really did feel like the team as a whole kind of woke up a little bit in that third quarter and maybe realized, hey, like, you know, this game is right here for the taking. First off, these two teams, there is maybe a little bit of chippiness between them, you know, having played against each other so many times within a very short span, literally 4 games against the same team within, I think it's 26 or 27 days. Like, that's got to be an NBA record. I don't know if it's ever been done before, that you play the entire season series within less than a month as far as like calendar dates are concerned. But across the board in that third quarter, Jalen Green, was really kind of led the way with 10 points, but then Fred also had 9 in that quarter, 2 of 3 from long distance. Dillon Brooks had 5 points. Jabari had 5 points. Alperen only 4 points. But just like, it felt like everybody kind of got involved a little bit out of the starters. And then the big part for me was the fact that when the starters did hit the bench, they didn't suddenly fall apart, right? You've brought this up before when we've done shows, and it's been kind of a recurring theme this season, is this team has really struggled to close out quarters strong. Right, they've really had issues with that, and it felt like this was one of those times where they actually managed to close out the quarter strong. They started the quarter like this was a complete 12 minutes of third quarter basketball for the Rockets, which is what allowed them to take that 18-point lead into the fourth quarter, and they had all the momentum. Like, this game was theirs, and they were able to try and run away with this game, and they almost did when they got up to 25 before Jokic checked back in. So I think that's something that they need to be able to like go back and look at on film and say, hey, like, these are the types of high quality possessions and minutes that we need from our starters, obviously, to get off to a good start in the quarter, but then from the bench unit as well. Guys like Aaron Holiday and Tari Eason and Jae'Sean Tate and Jeff Green out there closing the quarter strong. And again, credit to Jalen Green for you know, him being out there with that second unit, the unit closing the quarter.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was about comfortability. I felt like the Rockets were excellent defensively for the entire first half. But in the third quarter, you've seen the Rockets get really comfortable with their offense. And I thought Jalen led that comfortability. And once we kind of separated ourselves with about like an 8-point lead, then everyone else began to join in with the Rockets in this scoring spree or just being effective offensively. And I think that is what the Rockets need in a primary scorer. And that's what Jalen's importance is. And that is what we need from him day to day, but he's still working to get there.
I mean, look, Jalen Green, first half, 5 of 11 shooting for 12 points. And then in the second half, he was 3 of 6 shooting from the floor. So not, low volume, but he got to the free throw line a ton. And a big part of that was, again, some of the free throws that the Rockets were able to at least generate there in the fourth quarter as the Nuggets were trying to claw their way back into this game, which I do want to give some credit to the Houston Rockets. I want to make sure I have the number here right, but it felt like they actually did a good job there in the fourth quarter. What was it? 15 of 22. It's not phenomenal. You missed some free throws in there, but it wasn't nearly as bad as, like, say, the Spurs game, right? Where you go 50% from the free throw line and you lose the game because you're not hitting free throws. I do think that, Fred VanVleet got to the line in that fourth quarter a ton. He was kind of the de facto, hey, this guy is getting fouled. We're putting him on the line. He hit 7 of 9 in the quarter from the free throw stripe. So it became kind of like this free throw battle where the Rockets had to try and rely on their defense, and thankfully they were able to get some situational stops here and there. And then, but even like back to kind of like the decision-making thing, like there were some moments late in that fourth quarter, man, like, what was it? Like Dillon Brooks, I think on the inbound on one play at the end of the game where he almost turned the ball over or did turn the ball over. And it's,
which quarter? Third?
Fourth quarter. During
the
Nuggets comeback. Like it was just, it again, across the board, it just felt like there were so many mistakes that kind of started to compound things. And then a big part of it was, again, once the Nuggets kind of started that run and Jokic got going and it looked like he was determined and hell-bent to win the game, Ime calls the timeout after the 7-0 run, cuts it to 18. Like, I thought that was going to be Ime's, like, I'm going to make we're going to make a stand here at this timeout, right? Bring back all the starters, put a stop to it. And he came back from that timeout with the same group. And it was like, what's going on here? Or maybe he made like one sub, but for the most part, the majority of the starters were still on the bench. And that was like the really confusing element to me was just, how are you going to, because what's crazy is they're in the third quarter, the Nuggets actually had started a run, I think somewhere in that, like into the third quarter, and Ime called a timeout to stop the Nuggets momentum. Like they had like 1 or 2 buckets in a row and Ime was like, no, timeout, kill the momentum, kill the vibe in the building. And that was like a really great use of a coach's timeout to just figure out, okay, hey, we're going to kill the momentum for the other team, not even going to let them get going. So I don't know. I don't want to make too much out of nothing here. It's just that fourth quarter, man. Like I was watching. It took years off my life, man. I don't like watching that game. All the 100 some odd people that were in Rockets with me can attest to it. I was in there watching the game like this, like hands on my head. They were trying to tell me to breathe, relax, and I couldn't, man. I was feeling heart palpitations in my chest.
Yeah, man. That fourth quarter was definitely a thriller for us. I mean, the game was just in our hands and we could kind of feel it slipping. But thankfully, like like I said, I watched it with the Denver broadcast and listened to the Denver broadcast. It kind of just gave me some more insight into what Denver had been going through. And it just, to me, it felt like Jokic had finally got going, which ignited his entire team. Look how passionate Jamal Murray was during that fourth quarter. I mean, about even the calls that were clearly fouls, you know what I mean, that he argued about. But to me, it felt like about them getting back on track. And I'm just glad the Rockets were able to, get past that time. But yeah, I'm with you.
Coming up, final thoughts from this one, the 114-106 win against the Denver Nuggets. Rockets finally able to uncork one and get a win on the road, as well as Cam Whitmore, who just dropped a 40-burger in the G League. It's all coming up here in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins, and all you have to do is wager $5. It's that easy. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. Right now, you can take a look at the outright betting favorites for Super Bowl 58. The San Francisco 49ers starting to kind of run away with it at plus 260. The Ravens a little far off at plus 600. The Dolphins right behind them at plus 700. And then rounding out the top 5, you have the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs both at plus 750 to win the Super Bowl this season. They've also got you covered for spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started this NFL season. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets of basketball. We want your thoughts on this Rockets-Nuggets game. Give us your thoughts on kind of where, just your thoughts for just the entirety of that fourth quarter, from going up as many as 25 to then having that 25-point lead almost fully erased as the Nuggets mounted their comeback and the Rockets couldn't buy a bucket from the floor. Give us your thoughts, your reactions to watching that play out, and just all of it. I asked on Twitter for GIF reactions. I can't do that in the YouTube comments, so just give me your thoughts on how it all played out. But I want to give a couple more shout outs here, Madison, before we move over to Cam Whitmore. First of which is Alperen Sengun, who as consistent as he's been, even he was not immune to whatever the bug that bit the Rockets was in that fourth quarter. He was 0-4 shooting that quarter, but it didn't nullify the good game that he did have, right? He had 17 points, 10 boards, 2 of them on the offensive glass, and he had 7 dimes. He was flirting with a triple-double in that game. I believe he had 5 assists at like halftime, so not quite as effective, playmaking there in the second half, but 7 of 14 shooting overall in the night. And, these Nuggets matchups are important to Alpi, right? He's talked about Jokic being his idol. He loves getting up for these matchups. And I feel like, his production has been so consistent that, he was a couple buckets away from another basically 20-10 night with 7 assists on top of it. Like, that's basically what we're expecting out of Alpi every night. We've basically become accustomed to him being a 20, 10, and 5 machine. And he's only in his 3rd year in the NBA. He's playing at an all-star level right now.
Yes, of course. Alp, Mr. Consistent. I mean, especially at his 3rd year in the league, that is just all we can ask for Alp. Yes, everything won't be perfect, but once again, Alp is expanding his game with that mid-range, one-legged jump shot. I thought he was excellent with it in the first half this game. And Alp is just doing what he needs to do, setting good screens, being in the middle of the paint and making plays for his teammates. I mean, once again, I thought he was excellent defensively. Being in the right place, right time, rotations. I mean, there's always more improvement to be had, but I think he's just taken a leap defensively, and with that consistency defensively and offensively, I just can't say enough about what Alp means to this team. And once again, given a solid performance.
And we were talking earlier about Jalen's playmaking there and the fact that he only had 1 assist. So I wanted to make sure we pulled it up coming into this final segment. It wasn't a big assist night for the team. Again, Alp led the way with 7. Jabari second on the team with 5. Fred only had 3, which is, very uncharacteristic for him. Fred finished the game, though, as far as potential assists are concerned. Fred had 12 potential assists in this game. So a big part of this was like they were generating some looks. They just couldn't buy a bucket. So Fred had 12 potential assists. Alp had 10 potential assists, and Jalen was 3rd, in that lineup, which is kind of where you would like him to be, right? He had 6 potential assists in this game. But on the note about Jabari's assist too, I just wanted to give him a little bit of credit for his continued growth in his ability to put the ball on the floor, right? A big part of some of the assists that he got in this game was because he was willing and able to, as they were trying to run him off the 3-point line, because the thing is, teams are treating him as a shooter now. They're running him off the 3-point line and forcing him to put the ball on the floor and do something with it. And sometimes that's him, a quick 1-2 dribble pull up into the mid-range where he's very comfortable. Other times it's him actually driving all the way in and finishing at the rim, or like in this game, it was driving, drawing in that next defender, and then kicking out the pass either for for a shot or to just, get the ball moving around the perimeter and get the defense in motion. So I really liked what we saw from Jabari in this game offensively. Again, it felt a little rough that he wasn't out there to close this game. And I'm not saying that Jabari single-handedly would have prevented the fourth quarter collapse, but there's also moments where Jeff Green out there is a bit more passive offensively, right? He's kind of one of those connective tissue pieces offensively where he likes to do a lot of, screen setting. He'll drive, he'll kick to the next open man. Jeff's not exactly a guy who wants to go out there and is like hungry for his own shot. There's sometimes where he'll drive it all the way to the rim and finish, and you're like, hey, Jeff Green can still get up there. But that's, few and far between. I don't think of him as a consistent play finisher, and having Jabari out there maybe a bit more willing to take a shot or knock down a midi could have potentially calmed some things down, as well as the defensive production that he had. But speaking of defense production, the last guy that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet, mentioned him very briefly early on, but Dillon Brooks, who, first off, I mean, any game that the Rockets deal with a premier scoring threat on the opposing team that is, a guard or a wing, that's Dillon's guy. And so he had to guard his man, Jamal Murray, teammates for Team Canada. Those two go way back. And so much so they're great friends off the court. So much so that during the game, or before the game, I should say, when Dillon's doing his pregame stare down ritual, Jamal Murray came over and danced alongside him,
Really
was kind of
savage.
messing with him a little bit, and then he actually did the stare down ritual with Dillon for a moment. So I'm sure those two had a fun little laugh about that later on. But I want to give credit to Dillon Brooks for limiting Jamal Murray in this game, who, again, Jokic was off, and Murray was off, and a big part of that was, again, the way the Rockets defended those guys. It wasn't exclusively that. Some of that was probably a little bit, the Nuggets being in a bit of a funk, but Jamal Murray just 6 of 17 shooting from the floor, and Dillon Brooks did make his life very difficult out there, fighting hard over screens, navigating around certain guys, really being attached at the hip all the time with Jamal Murray. I thought he did a really good job guarding him.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Dillon Brooks brings in physicality on defense, number one. And I also want to praise, once again, his excellent shot selection. He hit some very timely threes throughout the course of this game, in a game where many of the Rockets players could not just buy a bucket. You know what I mean? And he had very timely threes, especially in the first half, but it also extended into the fourth quarter. And just to, put the cherry on top of Jabari, man, I just believe he deserved to play in that fourth quarter more. You know what I mean? I think he deserved to play. I thought his physicality defensively was up to par. I thought he was up to the challenge and engaged. And we just like to see, as much as this season is about winning, it is still about development, because without the development of our young guys, much of this doesn't mean much when it comes to the aspirations of championships, right? And so when Jabari is engaged, when our young guys are engaged, we just want to see them on the court and given that opportunity to capitalize. And that's what I think we're just a little bothered by.
And even on that point, I thought Jabari was the right guy to have out there if you're trying to win the game. Like, it wasn't even like a development play. It's just like, I would have thought. So again, look, everybody has
but that's what it's about. He's having a good game. So we should allow him to build on that, give him the opportunity, even though you may think, Jeff knows the schemes. He knows these guys. You know what I mean? We got to still lean on our young guys as well when they're having good games.
And one theory that was floated in Rockets Watch, post game, was the idea that maybe, it was ring night for Jeff Green. He was presented with his championship ring in Denver. It was a special moment for him. Maybe that played a little bit of a factor. I really hope that it didn't for Ime, but we know that Ime is a guy that relates to his players, that connects with players. Maybe he wanted to give Jeff a chance to, be on the court and kind of close this one out. It was their final game against the Nuggets this season, that kind of stuff. So maybe that played a bit of a factor. I hope that it didn't, but if it did, look, they still got the win. That's what matters. It was an ugly win, but they survived. And the reason the big takeaway here should be the reason that they were able to secure this win, despite the fourth quarter collapse, is because they did the work early in the game. They didn't play that great in the first half, but they did enough work in that third quarter and at the top of the fourth quarter to take a big enough lead to afford themselves this collapse, right? This could have been one of those games where Rockets are neck and neck with the opposing team, and then the Nuggets break ahead and they go up 10 or 12 or whatever. And we've seen those games where the Rockets claw back in and they fight their way back into a game, but they're just not able to, climb over the hill and win a game because they had to fight back in because their offense goes cold. We've seen this offense go through droughts a lot of times at various points this season. Instead, in this game, their offense did enough work in the 3 quarters prior and a little bit at the top of the fourth quarter to then give themselves that buffer zone to where when they did go, dead in the water and completely stalled out, they were able to survive just on the free throws, the intermittent free throws that they were able to get and close out the game that way and still force, some tough misses here and there from the Nuggets. The Nuggets didn't shoot lights out or anything to close the game. It's just the Rockets really couldn't hit anything and the Nuggets were slowly clawing their way back into it. But credit to them. They're no longer winless on the road. And they've got a couple easy ones coming up here with the San Antonio Spurs at home and then the Grizzlies at home. So they're above 500. They're 10-9. Hopefully they can add a couple more wins to that list with these next 2 games. But a guy that we want to talk about a little bit here at the end of the episode, Cam Whitmore. So Ime Thompson was down at the G League, rehab or not rehabbing, but as part of his, rehabilitation process, got a couple games under his belt, looked really good, recalled back up to the team. He should make his debut against the Spurs Monday night. That's at least the, tentative expectation. He's not on the injury report and he is with the Rockets. So he should probably play Monday night. Ime's talked about trying to factor him back into the rotation, all that good stuff. We're going to see ultimately what that looks like. But Madison, Cam is a guy that a lot of Rockets fans are ready to see play at a higher level. And, one thing that I feel like Rockets fans need to understand is that there was always going to have to be a level of patience with Cam, partly because his skill set, he is incredibly raw, right? He's young. His skill set is still needs to be worked on. His game needs to be, defined a little bit further. But then also it's just, where would you get the minutes for Cam on this current roster? Not only do you have a min coming back, but like, where do you then there's not a player whose minutes I would feel comfortable sacrificing for Cam right now. Even though I've had my frustrations with Jalen, even though there's been some guys who maybe have had some inconsistency or some up and down play in the rotation, I don't think there's a single guy that you can confidently say, hey, this guy, like, you replace this guy's minutes with Cam and the Rockets are a definitively better basketball team right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm incredibly impressed with what Cam has been doing in the G League. I mean, not just the scoring, but the playmaking flashes as well. I mean, the development with this on-ball reps has been honestly, as a guy who prides himself on draft evaluations, it's been enlightening and very promising for his future. But there's a clear gap in the talent level between G League and the NBA. And the role that Cam Whitmore is playing in the G League is an on-ball role. You know what I mean? And he's
playing the on-ball dynamic creator role in the G League,
exactly,
which is exciting to see because you're like, hey, the Rockets need that, but that's not the role that he would have with this team.
It's not the role that he would have this team, and right now he is still a rookie, and he's honest to God, we haven't seen him enough, but 9 times out of 10, he's not ready to carry that load. Very few players ever as rookies are ready to carry that load, especially in a winning context. So let's be patient with Cam. Let him develop his on-ball reps, work on his weaknesses, and become a more efficient and more effective and a more all-around player as a primary guy in the G League before we start to bring him up to the big leagues. Because honestly, we won't have the minutes for him or the on-ball reps for him to produce in the manner that Rockets fans see him produce in the G League. So I just want to let everybody know this guy still has superstar potential, but I'm telling you right now, the production that you're getting from Cam in the G League right now will probably not translate immediately. So let's just trust the process, trust our new coaching staff, who's been an excellent coaching staff, especially for the development of these young players. Let's trust them and understand that it will take time with Cam.
No, 100%. Look, again, this Rockets team, the fact that they're a little above 500, 10-9 right now, and we basically haven't gotten anything out of Ime Thompson or Cam Whitmore. Like, those guys are waiting in the dugout, right, ready to come into the game. And it's crazy that they're in the wings and we haven't seen them yet. And those two guys have incredible high upside superstar potential. Both of them do. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing a Rockets team that is forming an identity and starting to take off a little bit. And those guys haven't had a chance to really be a part of it yet. So, Ime Thompson's going to come back. He's going to be a part of the rotation, and hopefully he's able to take some of the burden off of Fred VanVleet, which is one more note, I guess, to throw in here at the 34-minute mark of the podcast or whatever we're at here at the tail end. But the amount of burden that has been on Fred VanVleet ever since Ime Thompson got hurt is way too much. Like, I think you're seeing Fred and he's a little gassed, right? Like I think he's like second in the league in minutes per game, which is ridiculous for a 30-year-old 6-foot-tall point guard who has been phenomenal as a playmaker and setting the table for this team. I think that's why you're seeing some of the inconsistent shooting nights from Fred. Is he probably just doesn't have his legs under him, man. Like, he's playing 40-something minutes a night every game because he has to anchor the playmaking load and he has to anchor the primary ball handler duties without another true blue primary ball handler out there to really lean on, because again, Jalen's been a little shaky so far this season, and Ime Thompson was supposed to be the other guard in that 3-guard rotation. Aaron Holiday's been able to step up to the plate a little bit, but Holiday's basically a 6-foot-tall 2-guard. Like, he's a wing essentially, right? He spots up, he shoots well, he can attack off the catch. You don't want Aaron Holiday like running heavy pick and roll with Alperen Sengun and initiating, right? So hopefully Ime Thompson can come back and alleviate some of that pressure, and we start to get a good look at him. And we know that he's a film junkie. We know that he has been studying the game from a different vantage point now, sitting on the sidelines. Ime's talked about the fact that, he's done his rehabilitation separately from Rockets practice because he's wanted him to feel included during practice. He's wanted him to be there to visually see all the stuff that they're working on so that he can still feel like a part of the team and understand the concepts and schemes that they're working on so that he's, can step back in without missing a beat. So his return should be very exciting against the San Antonio Spurs, more than likely. Again, it's not a guarantee, but he should be playing against the Spurs more than likely. It'll be interesting to see what that ultimately looks like, how Ime kind of balances the rotations going forward. But Madison, you know the drill. Let everybody know where to track you down at, man.
Yeah, man. Contact me on Twitter or X at MadmanLeaks. Come talk Rockets ball with me.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Give me your thoughts from this Rockets roller coaster of a win against the Denver Nuggets in the YouTube comments. I read each and every one of those every single day. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.